Hey, this is Michael Williams, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a tutorial of the Layout Designer. We're going to do this in 5 different chapters. So the first one's going to be about navigation. Next, we're going to cover the concept of the boxes and the fields. Then I'm going to show you all the tools for the boxes, then all the tools for the fields. And last, we're going to end with how to automatically set the heights for your strips. Okay, so starting from the main screen here on ThinkCrew, you're just going to click on the menu button. You're going to go to the Designer, click on the Layouts tab. We're just going to select this layout right here that I've created, which is a copy of the medium strip, and we're going to click Edit this layout. All right, so this is the Layout Designer. And let me give you a general sense of the navigation here. So there are a bunch of toolbars. There are 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom. And let me show you what these are. So at the top is the boxes toolbar, which will deal with everything having to do with boxes. And we'll get into that in a minute. Where you can add, duplicate, delete, and set basically all of the different properties you'd be able to find for any of the boxes. And you'd recognize most of these from any general word processor, fonts and bolds and alignments. We'll get into each one of these details when we cover this toolbar in depth. Next toolbar is the field toolbar, and this gives you all the controls over which field is going to appear in that box. And you can edit those. You can set the type, which would be like, is it a breakdown element or is it a category element? The content, the actual field name would go here. And then various sizing, and then there's some other buttons that'll appear depending on the kind of field that we're selecting as we're working on it. At the very bottom here, there's a whole other toolbar. And this I'm actually going to show you in detail right now. There is a preview that you can bring up, and this will bring up this preview of your actual data and what this layout will look like. You can actually scroll through these here. You can actually see an auto-sized strip right there and just sort of fly through. So you can actually see what this stuff looks like with your actual data before you leave it and go back to work. And this updates in real time. So, if I drag the description over here, you'll see the description sort of appear over there. It looks a little messy right there, but we'll just go ahead and drag that back. Also, you'll notice as I drag these boxes around here, I get a bunch of numbers here, and these are showing me the distance to any particular item I might bump into. You'll also notice that they kind of snap into place. See how that's kind of happening there, where I bring this a little bit closer to kind of just clicks right in there into the top or the bottom or any of the edges of any of the other boxes. That is something you can actually control. You can turn that on and off. So if I click this little blue toggle right here, that will toggle the snapping on and off. Now snapping is off and nothing is sticking. Here I can just drag it freely. I can turn it back on, and now when I move this stuff around, it'll actually snap into place, and those little spacers will show up showing me how much distance there is between me and another object. So continuing with the bottom menu, there are some sizers where you can make the design area bigger or smaller. You can make it up to 400% bigger. And you can scroll over here and see how it looks when it's bigger, or bring it down, make it smaller again, any size you like. And the next is the strip height. You can actually set this to be a custom value, or you can set it to be automatic. We'll cover automatic sizing later in this video. But if you want to set it to a custom size, you can just go ahead and just pick a number here and make it 50 pixels tall. And now this strip will always be exactly 50 pixels tall. You can also grab the bottom of this right here and drag it, and you'll see the numbers at that custom strip height change as I drag this around, and actually make it any size you want manually if you'd like to do that. But I'm going to go back and reset this down to auto. Also, whenever a box is selected, let's just select description again, you can see the coordinates for the position of that box, the width, height, the X coordinate, which is the left-right coordinate, and the Y coordinate, which is the top-bottom coordinate. So this is currently 389 pixels wide, it's 18 pixels tall, it's 58 pixels from the left, and it is 18 pixels from the top. And I can actually change those around. Let me just make some more space here, just so we can watch how this works. If I wanted to make its Y coordinate, let's say 100, or I can set it down to 50. See how that strip is moving around in real time. I can also set the height of it to be, let's say, 30. You can make all those adjustments there manually. And of course, you can drag these around too. You could just make them any size you want by just clicking and dragging all these boxes to any height size that you'd like. And I'm just going to clean this up and put this over here, and drag it back into the correct size to fit this layout again. And lastly, here at the bottom, you can set the units for how we're measuring these things. You notice I was just working in pixels when I was adjusting those boxes, but you can actually set this to anything you'd like, whether you like inches, centimeters, points, or pixels. You may prefer inches rather, if you want to work in print, and having switched to that, you can see the top here is now measured in inches, and the boxes are all in inches now too. It's all automatically translated. And lastly, for the navigation section of this video, this is how you get back out. So if I'm done with my design, you can either just click on the Back to Layouts button right here, or if I was still back in there, you can actually just click off to the side here anywhere. The whole thing will go away. The whole menu will go away. Or if you just want to go back to the Layouts menu, just click Back to Layouts, and now you're back to your layouts. In this next section, we're going to cover boxes and fields. Okay, so I'm going to start in sort of a virtual space here. We're not really in ThinkCrew right now, but I just want to show you some basic ideas. A field is a placeholder for a piece of data that's going to be in the database. And I think you probably have run into fields in anything else you've done before. The basic idea is that this field that I brought up here is for interior exterior. So in the representation of the strip, this would either be interior, exterior, or IE, or something that would belong to that category of elements. I would also maybe have a different field called set for all the different sets that I'm going to have, and I might have a different field for something like day-night, which would say day or night or continuous or later or anything else that might be in the day-night field. And you can see all these things actually are kind of related when you think about it, because this is what makes up a slug line in a script. So we have interior, exterior, we have set, and day-night. And in sort of old-fashioned traditional strip designers, this would be the end of it. You would just move these things around, put them where you want on the screen, line them up and say, well, that's good enough, and we're going to be done. Problem is that when you are doing a lot of designing, you start to realize that when I move interior, exterior up here, well, now I got to move these guys too. And so every time I drag one, I got to drag all the rest of them. So it sort of becomes tiresome. And why am I dragging all these different things when I know for sure that they're all going to go together always? And they should always line up, and they should always have the same kinds of properties, maybe font or boldness or what have you. So there's a different idea in ThinkCrew. I'm going to drag these guys off here. The idea for ThinkCrew is one of boxes. And a box contains any number of fields, at least one, but can be any number more than that. So that, and this is the box that's sort of been metaphorically drawn around these fields. And it ties them all together so that as I move this around, they're all one thing. They never get lost. They're always together. They're always part of this little family that is inside that box. And to this box, I could apply all sorts of different styles, bolds, different font sizes, and everything would behave as normally because they should all be together. Okay, so back here in ThinkCrew now, I've created a blank strip and I've made it pretty tall just to give us a nice work area. And I'm going to go ahead and click the Add Box button here in the top left corner. And it creates a box and it has one field in it. And it always defaults to that interior exterior field. I can make it any size I want. I'm just going to make it sort of wide here like this. And then I'm going to click on the Edit button. And then I'm going to add a field by clicking the green Add Field button. I'm going to do that twice actually, just so I can get 3 fields in there. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I'm actually going to make a slug line just like we did in that little virtual space. I'm going to go ahead and set the fields. So I'm going to select that last one there. I'm going to make it day-night. I'm going to select this one right here and I'm going to make it into set. And now as I move this around, they're all sticking together and I never need to go scrambling and try to find the one that I left behind. You can also move the fields around inside. So if I didn't like the order of this and I wanted day-night to be the second thing, I can just sort of slide that over right there and change the order up in any way that I want. So that's the basic concept of boxes and fields. I felt it was important that you guys understand that before we dive into actually formatting. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to format this and make it look all sorts of different ways with all the different tools here that we have in the designer. And with that, let's jump right into the tools that are in the box toolbar. Okay, starting with what we have already created here, this slug line, let's go ahead and give it some formatting. Obviously, this is pretty unformatted. Each one of these is centered. Doesn't seem like it's going to be a very good layout here unless we fix it up a little bit. So in the boxes toolbar here, which is the very top toolbar, is the one we're going to feature in this chapter, there are a number of different tools. We already used the add box, which will just create a new box. You can duplicate, which will make a second copy of that same box. You can delete. We'll confirm. I'm going to go ahead and delete both these guys. Those are the basics. Let's say I want to change the font of this to this guy right here. Let's say I want it to be really dark. And then let's say I want to make the font a little bit bigger. I'm going to make that box a little bigger to fit as well. And then let's say I want to make all of them bold and italic. And I want to set the alignment to the left. You get the idea. These are all pretty common functions you'll find in any word processor or any kind of like formatting software. Next, we have the ability to set the case. So normal case is what it is right now. I can make it all uppercase if I want. All lowercase, I can force lowercase. Or title case, which will make just the first letter in a word into a capital. I'm going to go and leave that as normal. And then there is alignment. I can make these top aligned, make them bottom aligned, or in the middle. I'm going to go and leave it in the middle. I can also set the line height, which is the amount of space in between lines. And to demonstrate this, I've created a new box, set the field to description, and turned on the preview so that you can see what happens to the text as I make changes. When I select description, and I change the line height, watch the distance between the two lines right here. They get a little bit tighter, or I can make them a little bit wider. This is sort of a nuanced, how much space do you want in between your lines distinction here. You may want it to be very, very tight, like that, if you're trying to squeeze a lot of stuff in. 1.5 is the average. All right, so let's turn off preview. I'm going to show you a couple other useful tools here. I'm going to small up these guys a little bit just to... If I select both of these here by either clicking Command click or Shift click, I can actually set the alignment of these. So let's say I want to align both of these to the top, or let's say I wanted to align both of these to the left. This is a handy way to make sure you're always going to be in alignment when you have multiple boxes you're trying to format at the same time. You can also set the borders for each one of these. So you'll notice that there's a thin gray border going around the edge of this box. But if I don't want that border, I can just go ahead and set it to none, or top, right, bottom, left, or all borders again. Like here's a bottom border. See, it's just the bottom border. And this becomes really important because you'll notice that there's no line creator, nothing to create a line going across the screen here in the designer. And that's because it became clear in the process that just having a border on the box and having those lines just be part of the box was a much nicer way so that when I drag this box around, its lines follow it. They're just borders. There's no additional line thing that I would need to move around and try to bump into position. You can also set which one of these is on top of the other. If I sort of move this underneath here, you can see that the description box is actually over the interior exterior. See how it's kind of underneath right there? And I can change that if I wanted to with these controls right here. This is the bring field forward and bring field backwards toggles. You see as I do this here, I can bring one of them to the fore, I can bring one of them back, just by toggling these two buttons right here. You can also lock these so that they're unmovable. So let's say I want to lock this. You see a little lock appeared right there in the top corner, and now I can't drag this anymore. It is locked in place. And these last two are the continue to edge buttons. And I'm going to cover this very briefly here, but we're going to dive very deeply into these two buttons when we get into the auto height strip section, the last section of this video. In brief, if I would like the contents of this field, for instance, the description, to continue all the way to the right as far as it can until it runs out of space, I would click this button right here, continue to right, and see a little arrow shows up right there. Or if I want this to continue all the way to the bottom and to the right, I can click that and you'll see a little down arrow right there. This will try to fill up as much space as it can get. And it also works in conjunction with the height of the strip, so that if there isn't enough room, once it's gone all the way to the right and all the way to the bottom in this example, it will actually make the strip itself bigger if the strip was set to auto. We'll demonstrate this more a little bit later on in this video. And with that, we're going to move into the field menu bar. In this section, I'm going to show you all the different tools here in the field toolbar, which is this second toolbar here on the top. You'll also notice that I've created some extra boxes here just to get some of that extra creation out of the way for us. We're going to create an actual strip by the end of this video, and so some of these will start sliding into place very shortly. Starting at the top left, we've already used a couple of these buttons here. The edit button, which turns on edit mode for the different fields. If you're not in edit mode, if you're just in this regular mode here, you can see all the rest of this is grayed out. At least some of it is. Some of these will work even if you're not in edit mode. So for instance, if I want to change the field in this box right here, because there's only one field here, I can change it to anything I want, and it's easy. If I wanted to do that over here, it would still work, but it would change all three of these fields into the field that I just chose. To do individual fields, you have to turn on edit mode and actually select the individual field that you want, and then you can set the individual content. Also, you'll notice here there's a button called type, and this is the different type of field that might exist that we're going to put into one of these boxes. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. I'm going to get through these first guys here, and then we're going to circle back and we're going to do that one last. Right now, let's jump ahead into this text before and text after. What is that? All right, so let's take a look at pages right here. I'm going to turn on the preview. Obviously, this doesn't look like much, but you can see the fields and how they're going to look as we actually start working with it or if we printed it out. Now, pages oftentimes actually will have the word pages after it. So it's not just 2/8 in this example. It would say 2/8 PGS or the full word pages. And this is how we're going to do this, is that we can add text that would occur before that field or text that would occur after that field right here. So with this selected, I'm just going to type space PGS, and now it says 2/8 pages. If I wanted something to be before it, I take that out, and you can see how that works. It gives you a lot of power into actually naming these things so that you don't have to have extra text boxes dragging around here as well, because this is always part of this. No matter where I drag this, the pages is always part of that box. This next item here, sizing, can be really important in boxes that have a lot of fields in them. So let's take a look at our slug line here. We are going to need to do some sizing here in order to make this look right, because these shouldn't be the same equal width, because interior exterior is probably only going to be 3 letters long. Day night is going to be fairly short as well, and set name could be very long. So we want to actually change the sizing of these. So I'm going to go ahead and click edit mode. I'm going to select this first field here, and we have a couple choices. So we could either set this manually. I can say custom width for this, and it will never be more than, let's say, 40 pixels wide. Or if I'd set this my units to inches, I would be working in inches or centimeters or whatever your units are going to be. I'd actually make that a little bit smaller. It'll probably never get any wider than that. Let's say that that's true. And that'll be a custom width. And then I could probably do the same thing for the day-night in this instance and set a custom width of, let's say, 70 pixels. Day-night will probably never get any bigger than that. And we'll leave set as fill, meaning that it's going to fill in whatever space it can grab based on everyone else having already taken their space. And that'll probably work in this case. But let's say, for the sake of argument, I'm going to go ahead and reset these, that I want all of these to be together or only as big as the text in that box is. So for instance, set right now is set to fill, these all are. And what fill will do is it'll say, how much space is no one claiming? And then let's divide the number of fields by that space, and then that's what everyone gets. So because there are 3 fields and they're all set to fill, it's going to be 1/3 each. So each one of these fields is taking up 1/3 of the space. But let's say I want this box to be only as big as the text that's inside of it. So I'm going to set to auto. And see how small set just got? Set is only taking up the amount of space that it's given. Let's go ahead and do that for all of these guys here. I'm going to set day, night, and interior, exterior to only take up the space that the text inside of them, the actual data, takes up. And you'll notice what this does in the actual preview here is it puts all of these guys together because they are only taking up as much space as the text allows, and they naturally center themselves. And this can be really useful for things like end of day strips, where you want all the text to sort of gather together. End of day 1, the date, number of pages, maybe the time. So that's how you would format something like that. For something more like this, I probably would do a fill on set and then custom on the rest of these, just so that they're always going to be aligned and have the proper amount of space. So I'm going to go ahead and set those right now. Custom, let's call that 70, and that'll probably work really well for a slug line. I'm also going to align these properly so that the day-night always aligns to the right, the interior-exterior should always go to the left, and the set should also go to the left. That looks pretty good up here, my exterior Bedford Falls day. And as I scroll through my actual data, yeah, it's actually sizing pretty well. The night always sticks over here to the right, the interior always sticks to the left. Looks pretty good. There's one last kind of thing that can be formatted here, and it only will appear in this menu when field of that type is selected, and that's dates. So if I select this shoot date, you can see right here, Monday, October 11th, and then the bottom part's kind of being cut off here because the box is not that big right now. And notice I got an extra item here. I got format and these sort of crazy letters right here. These letters represent a standard way to format dates. You may have seen this as you're filling out the date form on like a credit card where they want things formatted in a particular way. In this instance, lowercase 3Ds means do a short version of the week, 4 capital M's means the full month, 1D means that it's going to put the date in here, and then 4 Y's is the year. Let me make this box a little bit bigger here and we'll actually be able to see the date. So this is probably not going to fit very well as I try to create this as a strip. So I want to change this date. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the day of the week. And I'm going to use 2 M's and I'm going to put a slash right there because you can put in actual characters as well. I'm going to put in 2 D's, slash, and 2 Y's. And that probably looks pretty familiar to you if you've ever filled out a web form before. And you can see it's already changed right here. So now I've got 10/11/21, which is the date for when that strip is going to be shot. Normally, of course, you wouldn't have a date on a strip. The layout doesn't know whether it's a day strip, a banner, or a regular strip. You're totally free to design it any way you want. And of course, I can change this formatting. So let's say I want to do something more like this. Could do October, and I could do, a comma here, and just put a space there. You can sort of make this whatever you want to get the formatting that you need. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and drag all these different boxes into position, because this is starting to look like a schedule here. So let's just drag these guys here, drag this over here, make that the right size. Take my pages, we're going to put that right there. Take my shoot date, we're going to put that right there. And that's starting to look pretty good. Let me go ahead and change the size of this. This is starting to look very strip-like. Let me change the right there. Oh, let's give this a scene number. All right, that's starting to look pretty good. All right, so now we're going to need some more stuff here. One is a list of all the cast. That's pretty traditional. So let's go ahead and create a box. I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to set the borders to just the left. And let's go ahead and make that a little bit wider. And I'm going to create another box here, and we're going to get to that in a second. But just to get the box creation out of the way. And we're going to create just a bottom border there. And let's do one to the left as well. Let's start with the bottom one first. We're going to make this the cast list, all the numbers for the board IDs that would normally appear on a strip. And this is where we're going to come back to the type. All of the rest of these fields that we've been working with have all been part of a breakdown sheet where we have like description, scene number, pages, interior, exterior, day, night. When we start dealing with elements, we actually have to switch the type because it's referring to a different kind of thing, and we have different tools that we can use to work with this. So there's 2 different element types. There's element list, which is the one we're going to choose, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you element count later, and that's when we're going to count up things like how many background performers are in this scene or how many vehicles are going to be in it. So let's take a look at the element list. I'm going to set that to cast, which was the first option. And notice here on the pull down, I have a different set of items here that I can select from. Let's go ahead and do that again. You can actually see it. If this is a breakdown field, I can choose from any of the fields that might be part of the breakdown sheet. description, pages, location. But if I am selecting from an element list, I am selecting from a list of all of the different categories. And this is cast, background, stunts, all those other types of things you're going to put into your breakdowns. So I'm going to keep it as cast. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to left align that. And you can see here it actually looks pretty good right out of the gate. I have the list of board IDs. It's already listed there. Also notice that it has the ellipses here right at the very end of that field name. That denotes that this is going to be a list and that it isn't just a regular field. These are all just regular fields, so they don't have any trailing items there. The ellipses gives you a little visual cue that this is actually going to be a list. And I have some options here. This changed up a little bit. I have something else that I can do where I can switch how I want those board IDs to be reflected. Right now they're just board IDs. I could also just have the names. That's an option. Or I could have both. I could have both the board IDs and the names. I'm going to go ahead and just keep it regular IDs in sort of the traditional way. So now let's move on to this box above right here. And this is where we're going to do something a little bit fancier. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this a element count. And much like the name suggests, we're going to start counting up the number of particular elements that are on this scene. Now it defaults to cast because it's the first thing on that list. And notice what it did right here. It counted up 4, and it's saying 4 is the number of cast in this particular strip. That's correct. There are 4 cast members right here. And notice that instead of an ellipses, like with the list, because it's a count, it put a little hash mark right there, just so you can tell these apart by looking at them. But a count of the cast isn't that useful to me. What I really want to do is have a count of the background that are in this scene. And you can see here there are 29 background in here, which is great information, but it's hard to tell what that means. Just by looking at this, I don't know that that's background. So what tools do we have that could let the reader of this document know that that is background? Well, of course we could put text before. So let's go ahead and say I'm going to do BG, and now I've got background 29. And if I scroll through my data here, let's find something else that's got some background in it, you can see that I've got different counts of background in each one of these scenes. But that's not quite fancy enough. I actually want to get a little bit fancier than this. I'm also going to make this left justified, and I'm going to add a field to it. Because I want to do this again, but I want to list some different things in there. And let's go ahead and we're actually going to change the sizing of these. So I'm going to set a custom width here. We'll just leave it at 50. And I'm going to go ahead and change the custom width on this one, and we'll also leave that one as 50 as well. And let's go ahead and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, bring those guys together. That's looking pretty good. So let me edit these fields. I'm going to make that left aligned as well. And I'm going to make this another count. And this one we're going to do picture vehicles. And I'm going to add in VEH. Somewhere along the way here I misclicked this, and this should have actually been set. We had it before as a date, but why don't I just go ahead and make it a duration. So that's looking pretty good. We just designed a strip. It does some pretty complicated things. We've got a list, we've got 2 different counts, we've got text that goes after, or we could optionally have text that goes before if we want. We've got some very fancy formatting here on our slug line, and it all comes together into a very nice strip. But the one thing that this strip isn't doing right now is it isn't handling things like this, where I've got text that is longer than what I've allowed for the description. So in our next section, let's take a look how we can automatically height these strips. In this last section, I'm going to show you how to get these strips to automatically height themselves based on the content that is in these boxes. And there are some different rules to this, but let me show you the most straightforward way to accomplish this first, and then we'll get to the complications after that. So you can see here that in the preview, I've got a description that's much longer than the box, and it's not really fitting into this very nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and select the description box right there. And there's 2 things I need to do. The first one is I need to select the Continue Field to Bottom button. And that puts a little arrow right there. You can see that that's turned on to Continue Field to Bottom. And then the other thing I need to do is set the strip height itself from custom to auto. And there you go. Look at that. So this just heighted itself properly. And if I go to different strips, you can see that the strip height fits the content. So that's pretty great. Now, there are some caveats to make this work. The first is that continue to bottom only makes visual sense if the thing that you are continuing to the bottom is the lowest most box. So for instance, if I put this box at the top, it will continue to bottom, but it's going to run into all of your other boxes. So that's not a very attractive look. So anything you do continue to the bottom, you're going to want it to be at the bottom. Otherwise, it's going to run into the other strips as it sort of runs roughshod over everything trying to get to the bottom. The other thing is, and you can see this here, if you look very closely, you can see that these lines are not continuing all the way to the bottom. And there's an easy fix for this, but I want to show you why that's happening. What's happening right now is that the description is continuing to the bottom. It's doing its job. But it doesn't have any borders, or it has a top border rather, but it doesn't have any borders on the left and right. Those borders are coming from the scene number, which has its own border, and that is set to the right, and this duration right here, which is set to border top and left. So this line right here and this line right here actually belong to the scene number and the duration respectively. So the way to get these lines to continue to the bottom actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it, is we need to set continue to bottom on all of those different fields. Do continue to bottom, I'm going to do continue to bottom. And now a couple things happened. First, you'll notice that, for instance, on the scene number here, when the continue to bottom was turned off, it was aligning itself to this center line right here, what would normally be the height of the strip if this had not caused it to be larger. But by setting this to continue to bottom, it's actually now centered vertically because it also is trying to continue to the bottom. Same thing for our duration and for our cast list right here. They also have centered themselves appropriately. Now another thing we can do here is we can set this cast to continue to the right. And let's actually switch strips in the preview here. I've got a strip set up here that has got a ton of cast. It's got 56 cast members in it, which is probably larger than you'd ever run into, but you never know. So I'm going to go and select that cast, and I want these to continue all the way to the right until it runs out of space, and then I want it to make the strip bigger if it needs to. So to do that, with the strip selected, I just click on the continue field to right, and there you go. Now, no matter what size the strip is, and the strip is fixed right now because we're in this designer, and this designer has a fixed width, but let's actually jump out into the actual strip board here for a second. I'm just going to click here and jump out of it. Notice on this strip that we've created, this is not as wide as the preview was in the layout designer. So it is taking all the space that it has. It's very smart. It figures out, oh, I got to the edge here, that's an edge, wrap around and keep wrapping, but I also have a command to make the strip taller if need be, so I'm going to do that too. Now, jumping back into the layout designer, same caveats apply for things that we're going to say continue to the right, in that if I make this somewhere over here on the left, it's just going to run right over all the other text. So when you're sort of strategizing how you're going to design this stuff, make sure that when you want to have a box continue to the right, that is the rightmost box. And when things are going to continue to the bottom, make sure they are always the bottommost boxes. Never have anything beneath them. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, but you're just going to run into a lot of text collisions and your strip designs won't look very good. But as long as you follow those rules, you're going to get some very dynamic looking strips like what I just created right here, which sizes itself to fit exactly the kind of content you give it in your breakdowns. That is it for this tutorial on the layout designer. If you have any questions, please hit us up on YouTube or Facebook. Thank you for watching.